Now on Indianapolis This Week. Election Day in Indiana just 2 days away. The candidates make their final push to get your vote. We look at the top races in our state and the races around the country that could change the balance of power in Washington and what you need to know before you cast your ballot.
From RTV6, the Indy Channel, this is Indianapolis This Week with Rafael Sanchez.
Hello, I'm Rafael Sanchez. We're now just 2 days away from Election Day in Indiana, and right now we're focusing on the big issues before those polls open. 2014 does not include a race for the president, Indiana governor, or U.S. Senate, but it does feature 3 important statewide races and a score of local races of note. We start with RTV6 State House reporter Katie Hines.
The top race on the ballot is Secretary of State, the state's top election official. It's one of the few races that you may have seen ads for on TV during this election cycle. Republican Connie Lawson is looking for a full term in office after replacing Charlie White. And Democrat Beth White is looking to move from the Marion County Clerk's office here to the State House.
We're 48th out of the 50 states and people who vote who are eligible to vote. And we also have the strictest voting laws in the country. And I don't think those two things are a coincidence. I think they're connected. We have strict poll closing times, the earliest in the country.
As a state senator, I was a champion of promoting voting by making it more accessible for a voter to decide when and where they go vote. You know, we have been promoting vote centers, which really do create extra locations for a voter to vote early as well as on election day, more flexibility.
This is the one statewide race that Democrats think they have the best chance of winning on Tuesday night. We'll be live with both candidates as those results come in. Katie Hines, RTV6.
Thank you, Katie. There are 2 other statewide races on the ballot this year. One of them, state auditor, the state's chief financial officer. Republican Suzanne Crouch is seeking her first full term in office. Now, she replaced Tim Berry when he resigned to become the state party chairman for the Republican Party last year. She faces Democrat Mike Clater, who touts himself as the first ever CPA to run for the office, and Libertarian John Schick. And Indiana will elect a new state treasurer, the job that Richard Murdoch vacated earlier this year, as you may recall, to cash in on his state retirement. The candidate's Republican Kelly Mitchell, a former Cass County commissioner who has worked in the treasurer's office the past 6 years, and Democrat Mike Boland, who promised to donate his entire salary to charity if he wins, and of course, Libertarian Mike Jasper. Most counties in our state will elect some top leader, and that includes right here in Marion County. The most watched race will be that of Marion County Sheriff, and Democrat John Layton is trying for a second term in office. He has served 40 years in that position and is a native of Indianapolis. His Republican challenger, Emmett Carney, has spent 31 years in law enforcement, including 25 years with the Federal Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. I sat down with both men during the campaign.
I'm attacking what the sheriff has allowed to go on. The early release of prisoners, the budget that's out of hand. The budget has increased about $39 million since they went with the merger. And they need to understand that the merger is something that he, the sheriff, and Frank Anderson sat down and came up with this proposal of what they would do. Since the merger, the budget again has went up about $39 million, and it's went from 800 employees to around 1,300 or 1,100. So it shows me that there's something wrong.
An election where there's some desperation. You reach down in that bag of desperation and pull out whatever you can to try to throw out there to get the voters confused and, you know, get them thinking a different way. But the mere fact that, you know, our budget has been approved by the mayor every single year, they get it. The mayor's office, the city and county controller, city county council, they see those health care prices rise. They see and they understand.
We're following more races in Marion County, including for prosecutor, clerk, auditor, and recorder. There are also some key races for school boards, and that includes Indianapolis Public Schools, 3 seats on Tuesday's ballot. Ray Steele has been covering that for us, our news gathering partner over at WIBC. The key issue in these races, education reform.
You have Michael Brown, who has been on the board for a very long time, 16-year incumbent in District 5. He has a challenger that is backed by Stanford Children and backed by some outside money. The most interesting race, I think, is Annie Roof. Annie Roof is the at-large member, the current board president. She recently changed her vote on a key contract, the Teach Plus contract, which would have paid extra stipends to teachers in low-performing schools that were trained by this outside group called Teach Plus. But she changed her vote, and a lot of people think that it was politically motivated since it was so close to election time, and she has 4 challengers in the race.
And speaking of schools, we're following another big education-related vote. This one from Bartholomew County. Voters there will be asked to approve a tax increase to help pay for pre-K education. The extra money would allow the school district to cover the cost of some low-income children to attend faith-based or private preschool. It would be limited to students who qualify for free and reduced lunch.
There are families that are working 2 jobs, trying to keep a roof over their head. So why is it fair that their child can't have an education that everybody else's child can have?
A similar referendum failed before. Supporters say the wording on this one will be more clear. The tax increase would cost the average homeowner in that school district about $16 to $36 per year. So what are the key points to watch Tuesday night as those returns just begin to roll in, and what is likely to happen that night? For that, we bring in our political insiders next on Indianapolis This Week. Welcome back to Indianapolis This Week. Joining us now, 2 of our political insiders, Abdul Hakim Shabazz with IndyPolitics.org, Laura Beck, our Democrat, and of course, the one and only Mary Beth Schneider, former reporter with the Indianapolis Star. Welcome to the roundtable.
Oh, it's good to be here.
You're one of my highlights, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're more excited to see her than you are to see us.
But the big topic, of course, is the election.
The election, right. It has been 24 years since a Democrat has won a statewide office on an off-year election. Do they have any hope of doing it this time?
I think it's going to be another 24 years before a Democrat wins a statewide election. With all due respect to Beth White and the little cutesy commercial with the pancakes and everything,
it's cute.
The numbers do not favor Democrats. Right now, we're at about 4% early voting turnout. My sources tell me Republicans have a 12-point lead in that early voting turnout from voters that they've been able to identify versus Democrats. So they've got a steep hill to climb.
I think on election night, it's all going to depend on who the turnout is. And with all due respect to Secretary of State Lawson and her very good campaign manager, Jennifer Hollowell, they've done a great job on their campaign. But Beth has also run a really good campaign too. And I know you think it's a cutesy ad, but it's breaking through because people are talking about it. And when you're in some of these different markets and you're seeing that ad, it is something that catches your attention. I think that Beth has done an outstanding job with her campaign. She's gotten out there. She is tireless in her campaigning. And the other thing I think we have to also remember is the gay marriage issue. I mean, Beth has really, that's a platform for her.
But do you really think that has an impact either in
I think it has the potential to have an impact in a very targeted population, because we know in Indiana that the numbers are changing.
Yeah, but I think that target. But the target population would probably not vote for Connie Lawson anyway. Actually, would have been better for Beth had the Supreme Court decided to take the issue, and so that way she's got on the table. But now it's been decided by default.
Well, I think though with Beth though, I just think with it also though just really also is going to depend on who comes out to vote. Okay. One of the strategies that we've seen with Republicans this year, particularly in the state house, in the state house races, are it's a national referendum on President Obama, and so you would think that these state house candidates are running against Barack Obama, while Democrats have really been hitting the local issues like education reform. They've also been hitting jobs in the economy. So it depends on who's going to come out and vote.
We're seeing that nationally. I mean, Democrats are trying to run on local issues. Republicans are running on Obama and national issues. And I got to say, everything tells you the wind is at the Republicans' back. Why would Indiana be any different than the rest of the nation, especially when this is such a red Republican state?
I think I think that one of the reasons why Democrats are doing that, at least here, is that they're really focusing on the all politics is local method. And so that remains to be seen on election night how people go, but it depends on who comes out and who they vote for.
And if you think about it real quickly, this is really just almost a carbon copy of 2006, when George W. Bush was not very popular. You had Democrats like Joe Donnelly,
I had the same thought this morning,
like Barron Hill.
Thinking alike. Really scares me.
That can't be
that means you're starting to grow this Halloween weekend. It's perfect.
I know.
When Democrats sort of swept in, sort of trying to nationalize Indiana elections, the Democrats got the legislature, back from Mitch Daniels by sort of nationalizing the election. So the strategy makes perfect sense. I think the wind's at the back of the Republicans just because of the environment that we're in.
On the race for Marion County Sheriff, is there a race, or will the incumbent return to office on Wednesday?
There is more of a race than my Democratic friends are willing to admit. John Layton, from my very reliable sources, he has been polling. Apparently, he and Emmett Carney end up being tied, and that scared the you-know-what out of those guys, which is why you've seen the massive television ads. You've seen an influx of campaign contributions. Emmett Carney has been sort of working, the black community, the black churches, and going a lot of places that the Democrats, have been taking for granted.
I think Sheriff Layton's going to be solid. I think he's going to be reelected. I think that I think there's a lot of folks trying to make an election because there really hasn't been one. Emmett Carney has not been able to raise the funds to be on television. He's had somewhat of a social media campaign, I think, but I'm sure I think he's probably a very qualified person. But at the same time, I don't know if he's really articulated the case in terms of why John Layton should be fired and he should be hired.
Actually, if anybody wants John Layton to be hired, it's those 22 inmates that got released early, because I'm sure them and their families are all going to go vote for John Layton.
What about this state Senate race that's gotten a lot of attention, Mike Delph and J.D. Ford? Is Mike Delph really in trouble, or will the demographics of that district return a Republican?
I think that's the question of the night. I really do, especially here in this area. I really think that's going to be very interesting.
The one to watch that night?
The one to watch, yeah, definitely, because I think anything you need to know about that race, you can read in Mickey Mauer's column that he put out not too long ago about it.
Say what you will about Mike Delph, and Mike and I are totally different sides of the ideological conservative spectrum. If you drive through the district, although yard signs don't vote, they do give you a pretty idea of where your support is. All of J.D. Ford's yard signs are in right-of-ways. Delph's are on private property and homes.
Kind of like Cat Pings.
Well, yeah. Which shows you where the support is. And Delph does have he's got that base of support.
Delph kind of also reminds me of John Hostetler. That John Hostetler down in the old 8th District, about how every year you'd think you'd had him beat.
The bloody 8th.
Yeah. But will this be the year? We don't know. So we'll just see who turns out.
Speaking of the congressional districts, we only have about 30 seconds left. Will we see any changes, or will they all go back to Washington on Wednesday?
I think most of our folks will go back to Washington.
I think it's all status quo. Joe Block is kind of like that NASA rocket that didn't quite get off the launch pad up in the 2nd District.
Yes,
I did. I did for that one.
Where's your little script? But he's got a lot of one-liners today.
They don't change, but they go back to a changed Washington, I think.
Yes.
They possibly could. Possibly.
Mary Beth, the round table will change, but we have many more insights coming up. The insiders will return with the issue, of course, what will happen in the U.S. Senate, what will happen, of course, around the country. Our insiders will continue, and will voter turnout have any impact on these races? Indianapolis This Week continues right after the break. Welcome back to Indianapolis This Week. Now we have more insiders joining the roundtable. Democrat Kip 2, Republican Jennifer Hollowell. And the races in the Hoosier state might not be gaining a lot of attention, but there could be a major political shift coming to our nation's capital on Tuesday. Republicans could soon control both the U.S. House and the Senate. Our partners at ABC News are tracking 11 races that are very close heading into Election Day. 5 of those races are listed as toss-ups. You can see them on the map in purple. The 2 others, New Hampshire and North Carolina, are considered leaning Democrat. 4 lean Republican. The current Senate landscape leans towards the Democrats, 55 to 45. Will the Democrats hold the Senate? What do you think, Mary Beth? Will this be the year of the Republican, or will the Democrats hold on by the chitty chin skin of their chin?
Well, they're hoping, right? And they may not even know, because a couple states, including Louisiana, where one of the really tight races are, have runoffs. But I gotta say, I tend to believe when every single poll tells you something, I tend to believe it. And they're all saying it's going to be a Republican year and Republicans will control the Senate.
Is she right? Are the polls right, or are the polls off kilter?
Well, I think that Democrats have been running against the wind this entire election cycle. It's the 6th year of an incumbent president. You look back to 2006 when George W. Bush was in the same position. Republicans were running against the wind. And plus, a majority of these races are in states where Mitt Romney carried them. And so Democrats had a steep hill to climb. The fact that it's this late and it's this close, I think, speaks something interesting about this electorate and what's going on. I think the general populace is mad at all politicians. They're mad at everybody. And they really don't know what to make of it. It's going to come down to the wire. I think Kentucky here in the Midwest is one of the most interesting races. If election night Mitch McConnell goes down, I think it's going to be a good night for Democrats. If Mitch McConnell holds on, I think the Republicans get the Senate.
Jen, are you already celebrating?
Well,
think there's a very high probability that Republicans will take the Senate. Lots of races that are going our way, and I think you see Republicans closing strong in those seats as well. So I would say it's very high. I also think that nationally Republicans may pick up quite a few state legislative seats as well. So I think overall it's going to be a really good year for Republicans across the country.
So what does that look like, though, in the landscape? I mean, we talk about gridlock. It's already there.
Right.
Will it get any better, or is this president then done? If, in fact, he has to now deal with a Republican House and a Senate, is he just done? Should he just go home?
No, he's not just done. I mean, you look back at Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton actually, I think, did better in some ways when he had to deal with the Republican Congress. On the other hand, gridlock isn't going anywhere because even if Republicans take the Senate, they're not going to have 60 seats. It will be a filibuster on just about everything, just the way it is now, only it'll be the Democrats that are filibustering.
Is that your outlook as well, or do you think there's any hope that there may be some love there come Wednesday?
I think the Republicans have to show they can govern if they take over the Senate.
So you want them to govern? You want them to be in charge?
I don't. No, I want them to lose because I think they're wrong for America. But if they do win, I think one of the things that they're going to have to try to do to prove the American people that they have a governing philosophy that works. If all they're doing is opposition to Barack Obama for the next 2 years, then they will go into the 2016 election without any ability to say, here's what we're for.
What's been happening is House Republicans have passed lots of bills, including 40 jobs bills, that then all die in the Senate, and it all dies at Harry Reid's desk. And so if Republicans have a majority in the Senate, which I absolutely believe that they will, then we'll see this legislation passed, and then all of a sudden the accountability is going to go to the president because Harry Reid has just been blocking for him all of this time. And I think, you know, with the president looking at the last 2 years and what his, you know, how history might look upon him, I think that there's a chance that he's going to be a little more willing to work with people. I certainly hope so, and I think Republicans will do what they can to try to find compromise to get things done for America.
We're also looking at some key governor races. 36 states will elect their governors on Tuesday. Most polls show only around 10 of those races are still competitive. That includes 3 around the Midwest, Michigan, Illinois, and Wisconsin, where Scott Walker could possibly lose. Governor Pence is currently now campaigning for a lot of Republicans. Does he play any role in this? He's been traveling around the country. Can he help any of those folks out, or does he even have any weight on?
I'm sure he hopes he can, yeah. And, you know, you bank goodwill for a 2016 run, perhaps. But, yeah, those are going to be, I think, the most interesting races of the night are some of the governor races. And I think Florida in particular and Wisconsin, especially perhaps Wisconsin because of the recall effort that failed so spectacularly against Scott Walker. Maybe this time he won't survive that.
What about voter turnout?
Well, I just want to say one quick thing about the governor's races. It's kind of like the 2012 election. All of the swing states are in play here in governor's races, and they're all fairly close. You look at Florida, Ohio. Ohio's the exception, but Wisconsin, Iowa, all these races are very, very close, just like they were in 2012.
Voter turnout. Are you concerned at all about how people will or will not vote, or even people will come out to vote?
I think it's different state by state. In Indiana, because we don't have a governor's race or a Senate race driving turnout, it's going to be lower. But I think in some of these other states, you'll see turnout because they have lots of attention going on these races.
So who'll pay the price on Tuesday in Indiana? If people do not vote, who's more likely to win that, or how does that shape out?
If people don't vote, Republicans will have a better night than Democrats for sure. And you look at the last off-year elections, the turnout was around 40%. Democrats did terrible. 2010 was just a terrible year for Democrats. They were just a massacre in the state legislature. And yet, only 2 years earlier, 2008 was a great year for Democrats, but turnout was 62%. It is hugely different.
Nothing's motivating Democrats in the state right now.
There's no doubt we do better when there's higher turnout, which is why they try to pass laws to lower.
You get the last word, 15 seconds.
That's outrageous.
It is not outrageous.
That's completely outrageous.
On a Sunday. Look at the law.
Can we talk for a minute about that?
Well, I mean, it doesn't really seem like voter ID is what's driving turnout down, at least in this year, this state.
2005, and our biggest turnout was 2008. So it obviously didn't keep people from going to the polls, also didn't keep people from voting for Barack Obama.
You tried to stop early voting every single place in the state.
That is not true. Oh my gosh, we've expanded early voting. Connie Lawson, Secretary of State, has promoted vote centers across the state, which allows for early voting.
2008 in this county, we had 3 early voting sites. We haven't had it since then on purpose.
Are we talking about around the state? You're talking about
Marion County.
Why won't you support vote centers in Marion County?
Because vote centers hold down our turnout.
Vote center.
They do get along. They really do. And on a Sunday, we're going to go to church after this, all four of us, hand in hand. The conversation between our insiders continues on Twitter. Check out their Twitter handles and give us your opinion and stay up to date with Kip, Abdul, Laura, Jennifer, and Mary Beth throughout the week. Indianapolis This Week continues, I think, after the break. Welcome back to Indianapolis This Week. We want to make sure you get to vote on Tuesday. If you live in Marion County, we can help you find your polling place. Go to our website, theindychannel.com, and look at the hot button. We also have a link to the county's polling place locator. And wherever you vote, remember you'll need to have a photo ID issued by either the state or federal government. And that includes a driver's license or a military ID. If you're a student at a public college in Indiana, you may also be able to use your student ID to vote. These midterm elections are about to become the most expensive ever. Decode DC is our Scripps project that helps you make sense of what's happening in Washington, including an insightful story that suggests politics and political parties may be more divisive than race in the United States. You can find Decode DC under the news section of our website, theindychannel.com. And of course, RTV6 will have the most up-to-date and accurate election returns Tuesday night. As those polls close, we'll have all the information you need beginning on the news at 6. You'll also find the best online results on our website, theindychannel.com, and the RTV6 app. The results will be grouped so that you'll be easy to find, and we'll have a quick top races segment to watch throughout the night. Thank you for joining us today. We'll see you again next Sunday. Don't forget to vote, and have a great week.